Hello, everyone. My name is Lionel Sander from Pembroke Publishers, and thanks for joining us this evening. Before we get started with our webinar, I would just like you to know that Pembroke Publishers' head office is situated upon traditional territories of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of Scugog, Hiawatha First Nation, Alderville First Nation, and the Métis Nation. The treaty covering this area of land in Toronto, Ontario is collectively known as the Willms Treaties of 1923. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the WSÁNEĆ people on whose traditional territory I live, work, and learn. The WSÁNEĆ people have lived and worked on this land since time immemorial. And I wish to recognize the significant contributions of Indigenous peoples across this land. We seek a new relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, one based in honor and deep respect. And also today, I would like to say that our thoughts are with the royal family in the passing of their great-grandma, grandma, aunt, and mother, Queen Elizabeth. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. It's just great to see such a large number of people coming in today for our session. It's an exciting way to start the year, and all of us at Pembroke, thank you for taking the time this evening to come in. And just to get us started, I will a couple comments on logistics. If you do have any issues during the session, just start your chat with @Lionel, and I'll be glad to help you. I'll be monitoring the chat, so if there are any questions as the presentation is going on, please feel free to drop them in there. We've left some time at the end, and I will bring those questions forward to both our presenters, and we'll have a little bit of a conversation at the end. We also have a lucky draw at the end. A couple books we'll be giving out, and you just need to be here to have your name called, and you'll be in the draw, and someone will contact you about that as well. If you're also a Twitter fan, we have a hashtag Pembroke Webinars. Please feel free to take a picture, make a comment, tweet it out, and if you use the hashtag Pembroke Webinars, it's picked up and it'll come into the Twitter feed as well there. So with that, let's get started, and it's my pleasure to introduce our two presenters today. They're both below me, but I'm not sure where they will be on your screen with how the cameras come in. But first is Heather Willms, and Heather is a district reading intervention teacher whose work includes mentoring, modeling, and supporting both teachers and students in grades K to 7. Heather has more than 20 years of experience as a classroom teacher, learning support, and district lead teacher. A respected literacy leader, she works as a university sessional instructor, reading consultant, and coach for district schools and teachers interested in shifting to align with the science of reading. And joining her today is Cinta Alberti. And Cinta is a K-7 learning support teacher in the Comox Valley, located in beautiful Vancouver Island, British Columbia, just north of me. She has a teaching degree from the University of Victoria with a specialization in learning support. Cinta has experience supporting struggling learners and developing programs and support plans for students in need while working closely with parents and other school district professionals. And I think we're all very excited to hear your message and what you'll talk about today in your new book. This is How We Teach Reading, and it's working. Congratulations on that achievement. That's a lot of work. And so it's nice to be able to come here and celebrate with you and hear a little bit about it. So I will pass the virtual mic over to the two of you, and looking forward to this session.
Thanks, Lionel. And thanks everyone for coming. It's great to look at that chat and see lots of familiar names, and welcome. We also would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox and Pentlatch First Nations, and that it is a privilege to live, work, and play on these lands, as well as to work with families and to teach their children. So as Lionel said, my name is Heather. It's really good to be here today. I'm straddling two worlds right now. I'm working as a district intervention, reading intervention teacher, as well as working at Vancouver Island University, and I see some students online today, and you know, the future is bright when you work with the amazing students that we work with, and I'm super excited about teachers entering the field with this knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm Cinta Alberti. As Lionel said, I'm a learning support teacher, and just a little bit more about my role in Comox Valley Schools. I work at one school full time, and I mostly do reading intervention for K to 7, with mostly a focus on primary grades. And I do case management of IEPs for many different kinds of diagnoses, but also including learning disabilities. So that's what my day-to-day experience is like as a learning support teacher.
So we had a little poll up when you came in, and a few of you have entered that, but we'd just be very curious to see who's here tonight. So if you have a chance, just click on polls on your screen and let us know who you are, and then we can shape our conversation a little bit to who is here. Lots of teachers, which is great. So the tag on our book, this is how we teach reading, and it's working. And our tag is the what, why, and how of teaching phonics. So we thought maybe it'd be good to start with those three pieces: the what, the why, and the how. So phonics is, words are made up of sounds, and they're represented by letters in an alphabetic code. So the sounds that we speak are represented with letters. And there are 26 letters that we work with, graphemes, and 44 phonemes. I know there's a little bit of debate on that, but generally we say there's 44 sounds in the English language. So we need to learn the sound symbol relationship. Children need to learn that sound symbol relationship in order to what we call break the code. So they figure out that the letters on the page match the sounds in the words that they speak. And I had a friend who taught grade 1 for many years, and she said one of her students, when she broke the code, she said, "Oh, the letters are talking." And I think that's a really good example of what the sound symbol relationship of happens when children learn to read. So in order to do this work, we want explicit and systematic instruction so that all children learn to read well, to become strong readers. So when we think, well, why would we teach phonics? And I always go back to the National Reading Panel in the year 2000. So in that panel, it was a time when the United States stepped back and said, what's happening with reading instruction for our children, and why do we have students who are lagging with reading? And so they drew together a large group of people invested in the process of children learning to read. And so you had neurological and cognitive researchers, and you had educators. And it was at that point where, educators and neurological researchers began to really talk to one another about what happens when children read. And, neurological research on reading is not new, but it's something that educators maybe weren't as aware of as we are now. And so educators were doing what they intuitively felt or saw with their children to be effective, but it didn't necessarily align with how the brain learns to read. And so out of the National Reading Panel, there were 5 pillars. We sometimes call them the big 5 of reading. And so phonemic awareness is one, phonics is another, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. So those 5 pieces support the reading process for children and for adults. So in our book, it's a book about phonics, but we're embedding and weaving in all 5 pillars of how children learn to read, because it's not a standalone concept to teach phonics. Therefore, children need to read. It needs to be within the context of the other 4 pillars. So how would we do this work? So you may have heard a lot about the science of reading. You may have heard the term structured literacy, and that's the term that we really like to use. So for maximum academic gains, students need systematic, explicit, engaging, and success-orientated instruction. So systematic means that we need a specific scope and sequence or a learning progression for introducing the skills of phonics. We don't want to be introducing concepts where foundational concepts have not been taught. So we want to build a strong foundation and then slowly add concepts on top of that, so that there's an understanding of how language and phonics instruction goes together. It needs to be explicit. We need to provide really clear and precise instruction for our children about what we are teaching. And so, you know, you would start your lesson with, today we're going to talk about the vowel teams AI and AY. AI commonly comes in the middle of the word, and AI commonly comes at the end. And then explicitly teach and show children how that works, and then engage them in independent activities to practice those skills. So it needs to be engaging. And so if phonics instruction is boring, that's on us, because there's lots of really fun activities and engaging activities for our students. And we need to plan activities that reach the range of learners in our classroom. So when we share activities with you, we will often address the struggling learner, as well as those who have the concept well and can be can move you know, into more challenging aspects of the concept in order to become a better reader. And then the last one is, it needs to be success orientated. So we want to minimize errors and provide immediate corrective feedback when those errors occur. So it's in our loving teacher way, you know, we might say, oh, you remember, you know, if it's a long vowel when you're writing the word fine, then we need magic E on the end. Remember how we talked about that? So we want to be corrective and help children to become confident in the knowledge that we're sharing with them. So why did we write the book? And yeah, like Lionel said, writing a book is a huge undertaking. And so we just want to share with you some of the reasons that sort of led us down the path to writing this book. So I do a lot of work in classrooms with teachers. And then over the last few years, I've done a lot of modeling in classrooms. So I'll go in and I'll model a lesson and work with the teacher and the students, and so that they can see what that explicit structured literacy looks like in the classroom setting. And so sometimes when I would leave, they would be like, okay, Heather's leaving now, what do I do? Where do I go next? Another question that we get a lot is, how do I know that I've taught my students all the things that they need? Because when we look at phonics concepts, there are many, many of them. And so how do I know that I've taught them what grade 2 students need or grade 3 students need? So that was a question that we would often get. Sometimes we'd get the question of, how do I know where to start? I've got this new group of students, and how do I know what lessons I need to target in order to meet the needs of the students that are with me right now? We also got the question, and we still do get the question of, what order do I teach the phonics concepts in? And that is a really good question, because there are some guiding principles, but there's no hard and fast, it needs to be this, this, and then this. And then the last question that we often get is, where do I find the activities that will move my students forward? And how do I know that they're evidence-based activities that align with neurological and cognitive research, and not just some fun activity that won't support the reading growth of my students?
Yeah, so in addition to all those questions that we were hearing and that Heather was hearing in different schools, we both also saw a real need day to day from the schools that we're working in for a consistent learning progression. We thought to ourselves, how great would it be if all of our teachers in our school were following the same progression? And how great would it be even more so if all the primary teachers in our district were following the same progression, so that when students move from grade to grade, or even move school to school within a district, we are confident that they have had the explicit instruction in the concepts that they need in order to move on to the next concepts in the next grade. So students then, with a consistent progression or scope and sequence, are starting their year all having had the same instruction. Whether they're proficient and mastering those concepts is a different story, but at least we know that they've had that instruction, they've been exposed to these concepts, and it's not something new that they're hearing for the first time. Which for me as a learning support teacher, when I'm doing intervention groups outside of the classroom, is a really great thing, because when I see them, they've already had that explicit instruction in the classroom. And now I'm not telling them and showing them these concepts for the first time. They've heard it before, they've seen it before, and now we're just reviewing and practicing and getting extra instruction in these concepts.
Which is really a shift from what we used to do with intervention. It used to be that students maybe would have broad instruction, and then the learning support teacher would end up doing really explicit instruction. But often the children that came to us for intervention were ones who needed extra time and extra practice. So by having this work done in the classroom, when they come to us, I always say it's double. Then they get, that extra practice that they need.
Yeah, so the book really started with the blueprints. It started off with me kind of playing around creating a year plan overview for my intervention and the concepts that I wanted to make sure I was addressing for my kids. And I shared that with another learning support teacher at another school, who printed it off, and a colleague found it on the photocopier and said, wow, what is this? And where do I get it? This could be so useful to me in my classroom. I love having the idea of having a laid out plan for the year and a scope and sequence to follow. So Heather and I started working together on just creating the blueprints, the year overview and scope and sequence for teachers in our district. And then we kind of shared that around a little bit, and lots of people were interested. And Tracy, our district principal of inclusive ed, saw it and thought, this is good stuff. You might want to look at publishing. So that's what we chose to do.
I was a little concerned at first, because you'll see when we show you the blueprints a little bit later on, it goes, week 1, do this, week 2, do this, week 3, do this. And I was just like, will teachers be feeling like they don't have enough flexibility or enough autonomy in these lessons? But teachers have absolutely loved the blueprints, because they said it just takes one piece off their plate. So they know that this week I'm doing this and this, and if I follow this, I will cover all the concepts that I need to for the year. So that concern has sort of gone by the wayside, and we've tried to build a lot of flexibility into the process. So we wrote the book with teachers specifically in mind, whether it's teachers in the classroom or parents that are homeschooling, but just really, we both really have a heart for teachers and for how complex a teacher's world is, especially in these last few years. So everything that we sort of processed as we wrote was with the teacher in mind. So at the beginning of the book has some research about how children learn to read. And many of you have probably seen the Stanislas Dehaene video when he's talking about reading in the brain. And he said most teachers know more about how the engine in their car runs than how the brain processes the learning to read process. And so we started the book just with an overview of the research. There's so much research out there. I'm a research junkie, so I love to read it, but it's just, where do you find the research? What research do I need to be reading? And so the first section of the book is just an overview of how children learn to read, some of the things that are happening, not only things like the reading panel of 2000, which is 22 years ago, but things like the Right to Read report, which came out this March. So just, how did children learn to read, and what is the research that I as a teacher need to know in order to do that work?
There is also a section in the book all about assessment and screening, the why, what, and when of assessment. And just really quickly summarizing that, we talk about the why as the main reason is to target your instruction. So you know where to start. You know whether to review a concept rather quickly if your kids mostly already have it, or whether you need to slow down and do some really explicit instruction and then practice and continuous review. It's also helpful to do the screening and data collection for grouping students in your classroom and doing reading groups within your classroom, but also for any students that are being pulled out for extra reading support. So those are the main reasons why that assessment and screening data is so important. The what tools and screening assessment tools you use is really dependent on what information you're looking for. What do you want to know? And that can look very different from kindergarten to grade 3 and up. For example, kindergarten, you would be looking at things like phonemic awareness and letter names and sounds and a little bit of blending and decoding, some tricky words. But in grade 3, you might be looking at using tools that will screen for fluency and comprehension, like a benchmark or running record, a phonics word reading screen where you are actually looking at which specific decoding skills they have and don't have, like vowel teams or magic E or short vowels, etc. And then you would also be looking at spelling in grade 3. So those are all based on the students in front of you, and what you want to know in the grade level are going to tell you which tools to use. So we in the book lists our favorite screeners for all the different grades K to 3, and even provide a few screeners that we've created and adapted from other screens to use. In terms of the when, we have in the book a timeline for screening that we created for fall, winter, spring, for each grade level. So what assessment screeners do you need to use in kindergarten and fall, and then again in spring and then in winter. So that's all laid out in a nice little chart for you in the book. And one important thing that we like to highlight is that when you're doing the screening and data collection in the spring, it's so invaluable to have to pass on to the next year's teacher. This is something we've been working a lot on at my school, is making sure we have all that data collection and we can then hand over a nice little package to the next year's teacher. And in September, when the school year starts up, that teacher has all their list of students and knows pretty much exactly where their strengths and weaknesses are in all the different areas of reading from June. So they have a starting place for where they want to start their screeners, but also a starting place for where to start teaching in the blueprints. One other thing that we talk about is progress monitoring, which is just informal checking in with your students to make sure they're understanding and able to apply the concepts as you're teaching them, as they're doing independent work, as they're practicing throughout the school year.
I've had the privilege of working with teachers who screen for the first time, and it's been so fun to see them compile all their data and then go, oh, I can see exactly where I need to start with my students, because they can see some of the areas that they're lagging. Before I came to the Comox Valley, I had the privilege of being the district ELL teacher in Alberta, and so worked with 1,100 students, 600 of which were refugees. And so there's a special place in my heart for our English language learners. When we were writing the book, I told Cinta, oh, I just went in and put in a few thoughts about English language learners. And she was like, yeah, you had a lot to say about that. And I do, because I just feel like they're a very special part of our classrooms. So in the book, we talk about the simple view of reading, which is decoding times language equals reading comprehension. And so for our English language learners, they have the decoding piece and they have the language piece as well. And so we just have added some things to keep in mind as you work with these students, and just some strategies as well pop up throughout the book. And then we have a little bit for parents as well. And, you know, our culture is changing, and some parents are able to work with their children and some parents are not able to, or, you know, children may not be with moms and dads, but grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, or they may be in care. And so just a few things to keep in mind, the other thing is that kids some of our strong learners come home very tired at the end of the day. And so to just do a whole bunch of extra work is not maybe as helpful as it could be. So just some suggestions for how to move your children forward with reading without it being even a fight to get some work done. So there's that piece as well.
There is a whole section in the book about our high impact activities. So these are what we call evidence-based high impact activities. And that means that they're based in the science of how people learn how to read, and they have a proven track record of having a high impact on student growth. Teachers don't have the time to engage in activities that aren't having a significant impact on learning. So these are the activities that we have outlined for both decoding, which is reading, and encoding, which is spelling, for having the highest impact on students' learning. And they're multimodal. They involve manipulating sounds and letters. They interweave reading, spelling, and phonemic awareness all together. And we are going to talk a little bit more about the high impact activities in a few minutes, and we'll even show you a couple that we like.
So in the blueprints, there is a scope and sequence, and it's a very flexible scope and sequence. And we're going to show you some of those pages as well. But each year, as a teacher starts teaching phonics, they review what was taught new in the year before. So let's say I'm teaching grade 3, I'm going to start my year by reviewing what was new in grade 2. In some classrooms, that may be not just review, but it may be actually teaching the grade 2 scope and sequence first, the grade 2 blueprint, because it's new for your students. And so there's very much a flex built in that whoever you have in front of you, that's where you start, and then you move forward from there. And you may not quite finish your year of concepts, but you know that the next year, that teacher will start by reviewing and will pick up some pieces that you maybe wouldn't have got to. It's very interesting to do scope and sequence. Our scope and sequence that's in the book is very much in mind of who our teachers have in front of them today. So we do have some complexities from COVID, but we also had some things happening before COVID came along. So our students come to us right now with less language, and they come to us maybe not always learning ready. So you may look at the scope and sequence and go, my goodness, there's no vowel teams in kindergarten. And that's because right now, if we could have all our kindergarten leave us with letters, sounds, and blending, we would be super happy. And that has changed over time. Like I had a very interesting conversation with someone this week who they had a conversation with a teacher who had been out of kindergarten for a while. And so she was talking about the scope and sequence. And the teacher who had been away from kindergarten for quite a few years was very surprised not to have certain things in the kindergarten scope and sequence. But our classrooms have changed. And so we are working very much with the students that are in front of us. If you live in a place where more work is done in kindergarten, then you would just start where your students are and move forward. So if you're in a system where in kindergarten you would do letters and sounds, blending, and maybe digraphs, then you would just start at the next place in the scope and sequence. So it's very flexible that way. You don't have to start, everybody has to start at the same place, because you're going to do those screenings and know what students you have in front of you. But there was a lot of angst. There was a lot of, we move things and then we move them back, and there's reasons why they are where they are, but lots of conversations for sure.
So to go with the blueprints that have every week's concept laid out for you in a year plan, every single week has a concept page to go with it. So we're going to show you what the concept page looks like, a sample of that, but it has a description of the concept, some strategies and information that you need to know about that concept, word lists. We'll look at that in a minute. Throughout the book, in each grade, we did provide some full sample lesson plans for you for specific concepts that we thought it would be useful for each grade level. This is not a full phonics program, this book. It is a guide, and it is information, and it is a scope and sequence and a plan for you to follow. It's not a full package program.
We also have some templates for you, things that align with some of the activities. So there's some phoneme to grapheme grids, and there's a lesson plan template for writing your own lesson plan, as well as there's some screeners and data collection charts that we thought you might find helpful, especially when it comes to progress monitoring. So this is the scope and sequence of the book. So you can see what happens in each level. And again, you know, you're working with the students that you have in front of you, so you may need to back up. But if you follow this scope and sequence, by the time they get to the end of grade 3, they'll be ready for that morphology work that is our 4, 5, 6 teachers really would like to teach, but haven't been able to teach for the last few years because they've been working with children who are struggling with reading.
Our blueprints. So this is a quick little snapshot of what the blueprints look like. This is a sample from grade 1. So the blueprints for each grade have all 37 weeks of the school year, September to June, in them. But this is just 2 months that we're looking at here, December and January. And as you can see that this is your detailed scope and sequence. So it's showing you whether you're reviewing a concept that week or introducing a new concept that week, and that you're teaching these concepts through blending, building, manipulating, spelling, and reading, all intertwined together. And that's what the high impact activities will do. They will help you to teach these concepts with all those things in place. It also shows you which tricky words you're focusing on that week, and a little reminder to keep targeting in those small groups of at-risk students, whether it's in the classroom in reading groups or the learning support or reading intervention teacher. You'll also see that there are some flex weeks and review weeks built into the blueprint. As we know, December is a very busy time for most schools with winter break and winter concerts and lots of fun. So we're not introducing any new activities that month. And you'll see that there's 2 empty weeks there because our school calendar, and I think most, have 2 weeks off, or at least some time off at Christmas break or winter break. And then if you look at week 18, you'll also see that there is screening weeks built into the blueprints. So this is a week where you're not necessarily teaching and introducing any new concepts. You're pausing and you're taking the time to screen your students. This would be, since it's January, this would be the grade 1 winter screening that you would do. We realize that pulling students one at a time and trying to get through all that screening is time consuming and can be quite challenging in busy classrooms. We have a week built into the blueprint. If it takes you 2, 3 weeks, a whole month of January or more, that's okay. It's just important to get the work done as best you can. So this is a snapshot as well of a grade 1 weekly concept page. So this is what the concept pages look like. So for every week, you have one of these pages, and you can see at the top it says grade 1 week 21. The target concept for this week is vowel consonant E, or magic E, with the long I sound. It shows you where in the blueprint, what page to find it on the blueprint. It has a description of the concept, any information you need to know about that, and strategies. It has a little teacher knowledge in this one with just some helpful information, background information about this concept. They also have the sample of how to map the concept with a phoneme to grapheme spelling. And, which is really nice, is the word list. So every concept has a word list like this. So we've got real words and nonsense words. We've got extending words. We've got sample word chains for you, and the tricky words that you're going to address and focus on that week. The thing about the word lists that's really important to realize is the words in these lists do not have any concepts in them or sounds or combinations in them that have not already been explicitly taught. They should be completely decodable to the students based on where you are in the scope and sequence.
So we have a chapter with just a variety of high impact activities in the book. So we have divided them into decoding, which is reading, and encoding, which is spelling. And we've tried to give variations of some of these activities so that if you have students that are struggling, this is how you would maybe approach it, or those students who have quickly grasped the concept, and so you want to challenge them while still working within the concept. So we thought it'd be fun to show you just a couple evidence-based activities that we like. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about giant flashcards. And I have circles over kids' faces for privacy reasons, but I wish you could see their smiles because they just love this activity. So we have large flashcards that we use with our students. If you're teaching at home, if you're or a parent working with your students at home, instead you could still use these flashcards, but lay them out on tables or on the rug to do this work. So this would be an example of doing a simple CVC word, so consonant, vowel, consonant. And so you can do it several ways. All the students in the class can have their own a different flashcard, or you could count together the sounds and have them come up, and you would give the students the flashcard. So if the word is fin, then together you would count with your students. How many sounds are in fin? There's 3 sounds in fin. And so you would either pass out those flashcards, or you would start at the beginning and say, okay, first sound, what letter makes the sound? And they would say F. And so then the first student would come up. Then you would move to the second one, but you would always go to the beginning of the word so that you're reviewing for students who need that extra support, and also you're showing students how those letters are and sounds are in relation to one another. So you have F is up there, and then you would move to I. Okay, what letter makes the I sound? And up comes I. And then the last one, always going back to the beginning, I. And then N comes up, and they're all up there, and then you read it together, and the word is fin. So they love this. Then I might say, okay, now we're going to do the word pin. Let's count the sounds. I, N. Oh, one of these letters needs to change. Which one is it? And then you might identify that it's F, and then F leaves, and in comes P. So that would be a very basic way to use the giant flashcards. This is an example of doing magic E or sneaky E or whatever you like to call it. So, and you would have taught the principle of open and closed syllables. So in the word fin, the I is short, and there's 3 sounds. So now we want the word fine. So let's count that one. I, oh, we can't add any more letters that make sounds. How are we going to change that I to I? Wow, we need magic E. So E is standing beside the group with their magic wand, and they sneak over to the group and reach over and tap the I, and it becomes fine. If you use this activity, you have to keep track because everybody wants to be magic E, but they have a lot of fun with it. And then you can do it with all kinds of words where you start with that short vowel, and then so the word is fin, and then who do we need? We need magic E, and they love it. And then magic E comes and saves the day. So, and then another activity you can do with the flashcards, maybe students are working with the vowel teams A, I, and A, Y. So you have those flashcards. A, I, and A, Y stand to the side. And so the word is play. So how many sounds in play? O, A. Okay, we need A on the end. Who do we need? Do we need AI or AY? Well, it's at the end, so we need AY, and then AY comes over, and AI stands at the side. And then you might build the word rain. So rain, 3 sounds, but the A now is in the middle. So who do we need? We need AI. So then AI trucks over and joins the group, and then we read together the word rain.
So in the book, we also have a section about how to address tricky words. So tricky words, also known as irregular words or heart words or sight words. If you know the term heart words or know that activity, we also address that as a good activity for addressing tricky words in the classroom. This activity is a little bit different than heart words in that it is teaching these tricky words as temporarily tricky. So as you can see there, this is our first set of tricky words that we have in the book, and this is introduced in kindergarten. With the colors there, there's dots there. We're going to color in the dots based on the sound. So red would mean stop. That letter or letter combination doesn't make its regular sound. Yellow, slow down and think for a second. That may be a regular sound, but you haven't learned it yet. And green would mean the sounds are fully decodable. They make their regular sounds. Go ahead and sound it out. So I'll just quickly do a couple examples to show you what that would look like. So the word the, for example, we would start by counting the sounds. 2 sounds, 2 dots. So the first one, I would start by actually saying, what sound does T usually make? H usually says h. But together, you haven't learned this yet. Together, they make the sound v. And we're going to color that dot yellow because it's a concept that they haven't learned yet in kindergarten. And so then we'd look at the next sound, the E. E usually makes the sound eh. They've learned short vowel E, eh. But in this word, it's v, ah. This is what we call schwa. And again, in kindergarten, they haven't learned the concept of schwa yet. And if you don't know what schwa is, that's okay. I promise you, you're not alone. It's a concept that we do address in the book in grade 1. It is taught, so you can look for that in the book or look it up on your own. It's a concept that many people are just learning. So then we would color in the E yellow as well. And then we would say the sounds again, the. Let's quickly do his. So is 3 sounds, 3 dots. The H makes its regular sound. So we're going to color that one green. The I makes its regular short vowel sound. So we're going to color that one green. And then the S, his, usually S says s, or that's what they've learned so far. But in this word, it makes the z sound. So we're going to color that one yellow because they haven't learned yet that that's a common pattern that S often can make the z sound at the end of words. So then we would say the sound again, h, is, his. And you might even want to print a little Z over top of the S to help them remember that it is the Z sound, his. We'll do one more. We'll do of. Of is a tricky word. It's only got 2 sounds, but neither of them make their typical sound that kids would know. So the O in of, normally O says ah, but in this word it says which is another schwa sound. So we're going to color that one yellow because they haven't learned schwa yet, but they will. And then the F, usually F says f, but in this word it says of. That is not a regular sound for F. And so we're going to color that one red because it does not make a regular sound. And again, you could print the letters that make those sounds above. You could put a U for over the O and a V for the V sound over F to help them remember if they're having a hard time remembering.
So this would be a shift from, instead of memorizing sight words, now we're looking at how the word is put together. and really paying attention, are there pieces of that word that I can sound out instead of just memorizing them all as a sight word.
Yes. And so this activity, you wouldn't do this whole set of words all at once. This is you introducing these 3 words. And in our scope and sequence, in our blueprints, we only do I think 3 is the most that we do in a week. So this is a way to introduce them, and then you would be practicing them throughout the week, reading them, spelling them, graphing them throughout the week. Just quickly, I'll let you know that we have a little freebie of this activity on our social media pages. So we'll let you know how to find that later on. And then a few variations to this activity. Instead of having all the words on one page, you could do individual flashcards. Instead of using the dots, you could trace the letters with colors. And then a fun thing to do, I think a fun thing to do, is to review these words after you've taught these skills. So after you've taught schwa or taught S makes the Z sound, then you can go back and say, look, this word, it's all green now. We know that this is a decodable word. We know this word, and it's no longer a tricky word because you've learned these skills.
So the last thing we wanted to share with you is our phonics boxes. And so I was working with a couple teachers, and they were test driving our scope and sequence and some of the stuff that we were working on. And they were like, how can we make this easy for teachers? And so what we came up with was the Phonics Box. So what it is it's 1 year of this scope and sequence in a box. And you would have this box as well as your classroom materials like letter tiles and word ladders that are maybe laminated and phoneme grapheme sheets that are laminated. But it has caught on all across our district in an incredible way. Like someone talked about them and then they're like, we want those. So what they are is they're a way to organize your materials and lessons for the whole school year. So each teacher has a phonics box in their room with the lessons that they're going to teach for that year. It follows the scope and sequence of the book. So each one goes week 1, week 2, week 3. And we put the labels on our social media as well. So you don't have to write that on every file. So if it's week 6 and you're doing the digraph CH in grade 1, then in that file you would have your activities. And of course, each box would have a copy of the book. So then we have, you can work with your team and share activities either as a school or we're doing it as a district, sharing really good strategies that can be used to teach these lessons. And it builds consistency. So if all of your grade 1 team has the same box, then you know that your students coming out of grade 1 have had the same instruction in phonics, which really helps. Your group may be a little slower or a little faster, but you work through that box in the same way as a grade level. These are some of the boxes that we made. It's easy for organization for if you have a replacement teacher, so a TTOC or a substitute, because what you can do is if you're on CH week 6 and you're down with the flu, you just pull that file and leave it with your subplans and everything is there for them to continue that work. It's a flexible structure to meet the needs of your classmates. So maybe you're not doing the suffix ed yet, but your students are ready for it. You can just reach forward, pull that file forward and teach that concept because at this point in time your students are ready or you feel that they need it. So it's very flexible as far as having everything in files that you can move around if you need to. And then it's very multimodal. So when we first built them, a few got filled with paper pencil stuff. And then we're like, oh, no, that's not what this is for. Some paper pencil for sure we want, but it's those multimodal activities. So it might be games, it might be word wheels, it might be mapping activities, or there's some like games where you can roll the dice and and move up the word ladder or something like that. So it's those types of activities that we want for our students. When I started doing this work, I had a lot of teachers say, I don't want kill and drill phonics. Like I don't want boring phonics. And again, this is nothing like boring phonics. So I was working in a school I was in a class with a lot of real struggling readers, and one little guy started the year in the hallway. And by the time I left 3 months later, he was like highly engaged. So then I went back a month later and he was in the office. And so I said, hey, I'm doing a reading lesson. And then he started shoving food in his mouth, and the EA was like, oh, he's here to have a snack in his pill. And he took the pill, slugged it down and said, okay, I'm ready to go. So they're lots of fun. The kids love them. They love them because they're able to access them and be successful in their work. So we want lots of multimodal engaging activities and a few paper pencil, because that fills in some pieces, and you can check for understanding that way as well. And then because we started in one school and then another school wanted to do it in another school. So in our district, we have on Teams, we have a digital Phonics Box. And so on there are like PowerPoints and activities that teachers, if I'm teaching in Cumberland, which is sort of up the mountain from Comox, then I can access an activity that a teacher in Courtney might have loaded onto there. So there's been lots of good sharing. Cinta and I administer that site because we want to make sure that the activities are ones that are worth our teachers' time and align with how the brain learns to read. But it's been phenomenal the way that Phonics Boxes have taken off. I've been told many times that we should make and sell them. And I'm just like, that goes totally against the Phonics Box, because it has to be the work of your team deciding together what needs to go in there. So each file would have like lists of words and decodable passages and activities and games that teachers can access and do. So it's hot. It's really hot in the Comox Valley. So.
Yeah, so that's what we wanted to share about our book. So if you're interested in the book or wondering where it is and how to get it, it's available right now in digital ebook form on Pembroke Publishing website. And next week it'll be available in hard copy, so you can pre-order from Amazon or other online retailers or even local bookstores. And it should be coming out next week, and we're excited about that. Our social media that we mentioned, we do have a few sites that we're working on, and we have a Facebook page. This is how we teach reading, an Instagram account, and soon to be TikTok videos that we're going to work on. So on all those social media sites, you're going to find freebies that we're going to be posting, information, strategies, activities, and then any upcoming events that we might be having.
Yeah, we missed. We're double clicking here. So if you'd like to contact us, these are our email addresses. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to be helpful. We cannot set up an individual plan for your children, but we'd be as helpful as we could be. And then I also do workshops. So if you're interested in workshops, that is my website that you could visit. Okay, I'm going to go to questions, and I know Lionel is here, and I had a peek while Cinta was talking, and there's a lot in the comments, isn't there?
There is. I've tried to sort of keep track of everything here, and there's kind of two categories, I think. And I know we're really short on time, so we might have to keep the answers a little bit short, but I put your email addresses in there so people can reach out to you as well. Folks, I know we'll probably go a couple minutes over, but I think the questions you saw in there, especially I sort of pulled out 3 practical ones, and then I know Adrian has one as theirs, but that's a little bit deeper. So we'll see how we're doing for time. So about halfway through, Catherine asked, how could you use your scope and sequence if you already have another phonics program in your school, district, or wherever? I'm sure you've experienced that, but do you have any thoughts on how you would address that?
Well, often a phonics program will explicitly teach each of the concepts. So you could pull those lessons. I saw a very similar question when I was scrolling through as well, because we don't give you that lesson for every concept, because one, we only had how many pages, and we expanded on that. So room was a piece for us. But for example, one of the questions I get a lot is we've been using Jolly Phonics, and we find that our kids are not ready for the digraphs and the vowel teams that Jolly Phonics asks us to teach. So, but there's some really great pieces about Jolly Phonics, like the little songs and actions that go with the sounds. And so what teachers have done is they have kept the instructional practices of Jolly Phonics, but they have followed our scope and sequence. So in kindergarten, they really want to get that letter sounds blending and then leave those other pieces. If I was very new to phonics, I would buy this book and the UFLI Foundations book, which has all of the explicit lessons and PowerPoints. That would be a wonderful pairing, is, our book on how to actually get the work done within the classroom setting, and then something that has every single lesson plan, if that's support that you feel you need.
Right. Good. So I guess that goes back to, I thought I'd made a note of it here. You're calling your book a framework. Was that the right word? Do I remember that correctly? It's not a program. Jacinta, I think you said that, right?
Yeah, it's more of an instructional guide and a framework rather than a full box program.
Yeah. No, I like that. So there's the flexibility in there as well. Sarah made a comment, asked a question a little bit later, is when you're doing it sort of let's say you're following the scope and sequence, are you going for mastery? Because she was curious of what it might look like if some students weren't keeping up. And I know that's a big question and it's 5 o'clock, but is there, again, some thoughts on that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So our goal is mastery, but we're working with large groups of students in a classroom. So one of the really important components of structured literacy is that you're continually reviewing what's already been taught. So you don't teach and then move and then teach and then move. So if you do that progress monitoring when your students are doing independent activities, and you look and you go, oh, we don't have this, then you go back to work and instruction together and reteach and reinforce, and then check that the majority of your students are moving forward. Those who are lagging, we need to find ways to work and give them that extra. And then we are continually reinforcing, oh, remember AIAY in the word main, you can't just use A, because that just says and so you're constantly reviewing. And that's where, like, Louisa Mose has a great quote on, teachers teach reading, programs don't. And so we need to be knowledgeable, and then we are continually working with our students to
and that knowledgeable piece you captured at the beginning around, I think, is in the front of your book, at least some of the research that's out there at this particular point. Yeah, great. Just one more then, and this comes from Lara. Sorry if I got that wrong. Do you have any sort of, if you're looking at this program and the book comes out and I get it, but I've got a combined class, is there any suggestions there you might be able to? Is there some guidance in the book, or some experiences you can bring forward with that?
I know that's a conversation at your school, Cinta. How are you addressing?
Well, the first thing I was going to say that came to my mind is starting with those screeners, right? And seeing who's in front of you. Just because they're grade 1 or grade 2 doesn't mean they have totally different skills already. The grade 2s could still be needing all of the grade 1 instruction. It depends on who's in front of you and what those screeners and data tell you. In terms of the phonics boxes, we kind of struggled with that a little bit because we have quite a few of combined classes. And we actually made combined phonics boxes where we actually have the whole grade 1 and the whole grade 2 set within one box. So that was one way that we kind of tried to address that. But I would start with information and your data from your screeners.
But you do need to divide and conquer, because the skills that your 2s need are different than the skills that your 1s need, and it needs to be explicitly taught. Yeah. And then I'm just a reminder that this is one of the big 5. So we don't just get a phonics box and go and say we've taught reading, but we're still doing all that rich literacy work and vocabulary and comprehension stuff that's a part of our role.
Perfect. And I think that starts to address a little bit of Adrian's question. I know we're out of time, and that's a big question, but we'll leave that for next time, and you build on that. So just before we finish here, folks, and I'll sort of we're going to do our quick lucky draw, and also we have an offer for folks. So if you're interested in the book that's coming out, if I can find it here, I think I can put it up to your screen as send that out. Let's see if that comes up on folks' screen. You should see there is a $5 off code, Science of Reading, SOR22, and if you click on that, that will take you to the Pembroke Publishers site. So can you pre-order, or is it? I think you can. I think you're can pre-order. It's coming out next week. So please, or just go to the PembrokePublishers.com and pick their book. And if you put that code in, you'll get $5 off on the purchase. And we also have a lucky draw at the end. We're just going to very quickly, the way this works is we're going to draw from the audience, and we'll have one lucky winner here. We're just going to spin it and see what happens here. Someone's name's going to pop up, and I know the Pembroke folks are here. And Julie, you'll be contacted tomorrow. Congratulations, you are our lucky winner for this time of the new book that's coming out, and we'll get an e-copy of that it being sent to you. So it's that brings us to an end, and thanks for those of you that stayed on. I know we went a little bit over, but I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today for our first session. And for the 2 of you, thank you so much for the time and effort. And this is a huge area that's growing. And there were a couple comments in there about being brave. And thank you for making this so applicable and practical. And I know it's a lot of hard work buried in probably those rooms, writing, wondering if this is all going to work. And it is, based on the comments here. So I'll just let you close this out with some final comments, and remind folks that our next session is on September 29th with Cheryl Duquette from the University of Ottawa. So there's a link in the sticky. Please highlight that and drop that in and join us. So I'll pass it over to you to finish this and take us out.
Okay, well, thanks for coming, and I will look through your comments and stuff. Please feel free to email us, and I would say just really enjoy the journey with your students. There's just so much information coming at us as teachers, and you don't have to throw out everything that you've done, but pick a few activities that meet the needs that you see in your classroom through screening. And it's amazing how quickly kids shift. I don't know if we have time, but I worked in a classroom where we had no readers. And I said, be patient, in a couple of weeks we might see shift. And within 5-6 days, we had to change groups because kids were starting to do that work and starting to move, and we needed to change. So it really, we have to say it works, and it's really exciting to be a part of that journey with our kids. Cinta, you want to?
Oh, just thank you for watching and listening, and we hope it's helpful to everybody.
Great. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time. And have a good evening wherever you are in this great country of ours. So take care.